So, welcome to another Impact Sessions podcast with me, Nick Bramley. I've got a controversy title session this one. It's called "If You've Got a Pension, Listen to or Watch This Podcast." And if you do listen or watch, you'll find out why. Now, my guest today is a good friend of mine. He's also a well-known member of the West Yorkshire property and commercial property sector. It's Jon Anderson. He's head of the Leeds office and director of building consultancy at Lambert Smith Hampton. And he's going to explain to us as we go through why, if you've got a pension, you definitely need to be listening to this. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, Jon.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and thanks for the opportunity to join your Impact Sessions podcast. I've seen them growing over the last year or so keen and pleased to be part of one.
Excellent.
So for those that don't know, Lambert Smith Hampton, a commercial property business. Currently, we've got offices everywhere, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes when we talk about the impact that the current situation is having on offices. But for now, let's just say we have our offices everywhere. What we do really is we help clients with commercial property to get the most out of their assets, whether that's advising them prior to a purchase or advising them on occupation or even disposal and redevelopment. So we cover the whole spectrum of commercial property. Now, for me personally, I've been at LSH 7 years, head of the office in Leeds for the last 6. And what attracted me to the role in the first place, or the career really, is the diversity, the unpredictability and variety. No 2 days are the same, and you work in a people business with an energized and enthused team. It's part of the job that I love, just the interaction and the support you get from having a committed team.
I do like the idea that you like unpredictability, because I think 2020 has probably extended that beyond any measure that you probably expected ever, Jon, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think even for those that do like a little bit of chaos, this has been challenging to say the least. I'm sure we're going to come on to that as we carry on.
I think we are. I think I've provocatively entitled the episode, really, I think, because I think people would just say commercial property, nothing to do with me in a lot of cases if they're listeners or they're not involved in that. But the reality is, if you're a property business, you're going to probably have investment from all the big major pension funds, aren't you? And every major pension fund has always fallen in love with and loved commercial property. So the question I've got for you really as a starting point is, are pension fund investors still in love with commercial property, Jon?
Yeah, I think they are, and they always will be. I think your property has long been a safe place for investment, whether it's residential or commercial. That's not going to change. But obviously what's happened now, and was what happened in the past in other periods of economic turmoil, is things go a little bit quiet while people take a sense check on what's the right direction for their investment. But that old adage of location applies to residential. It also applies to commercial, but also within commercial, you've got to look a bit more at sectors. So residential is a sector, whereas commercial property covers a whole myriad of sectors, and those go through cyclical change. That's what's happening at the moment. It's what happened when Brexit was first a thing. It's what happened 10 years ago in the financial crisis, and at all other periods of recession. Different sectors are impacted in different ways. I think with this one, this is truly global, whereas the financial crisis was more just sort of the developed world and the commercial world. This pandemic hasn't left any stone unturned, and it will have a deep reaching impact on all aspects of life, and commercial property is no different. But investors will still seek out opportunities in periods like this. With any crisis, there's always opportunity, and that's not to sound sort of where you're trying to take opportunity of a poor situation. Mercenary was the word I was searching for there. It's not to try and sound mercenary at all. There is always opportunity for some, and we'll come on to that in in other discussions later on, I'm sure. But you've got at one end of the scale commercial property being a safe haven, but some elements of it are more attractive than others, let's say, to sort of round up the answer to that question.
Okay. So in terms of the overall impact of COVID, certainly in the UK, one of the things is about confidence, isn't it? Confidence in the sector, confidence in property, confidence in sort of retail or office space or that kind of thing. What's your view? And perhaps I should say, I'm asking John for his personal views, maybe not necessarily those of Lambert Smith Hampton, but I'm sure the two sort of go together. I just want to give you that get out of jail card in case, you say something you shouldn't. But, what's your view on
No,
confidence in commercial property in general? You're coming back and the fact that it will always be worth a look.
Yeah, and again, sort of touching on some of the points just mentioned there, commercial property is going to be a safe place for investors going forward, as it has been going back over recent years. But at the moment, they've just got to take stock a little bit. They've got to consider which areas have got the opportunity. And yes, there's growth in certain sectors, there's suppression in others, but it could be that the better opportunities are in those areas where there are a lot of changes. If you take the logistics market, for example, the whole explosion of online retail has caused clients of ours to try and find new properties for distribution warehouses, that last mile of delivery, and the main hubs of distribution. It's caused them to go absolutely crazy. They're entering into 10 new leases a week all over the country.
They're massive.
Just to meet the demand.
These distribution centres are massive as well, aren't they? And they're usually in an out of town area for good access to the road networks and things.
Exactly.
So that's an interesting switch, I guess. Online retail, as you say, has exploded. Probably, very much at the detriment of the high street retail. But it's not just because of online. High street's been badly damaged by lockdowns and no footfall and all that kind of thing. I'm going to touch on hospitality and retailers too, and I know they're very separate sectors, but to me, they've been under really immense pressure because of lockdown restrictions. They really haven't been allowed to open. I was watching an article on the TV this week, and a bar in Sheffield had said they've been closed 22 weeks of the year, and that was it's half a year gone, hasn't it, really? So in terms of retail and hospitality then, is there any crumb of comfort for them, anything happening around those sectors that people can stick in there and think about, 2021 will get better? Obviously, we're all hoping of vaccines and stuff anyway, but from a property point of view, is there anything that's happening around those sectors, support from the government or whatever it might be, that gives people a crumb of comfort?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and those are two of the most hardest hit sectors. We were just talking then about logistics being a boom and not necessarily the best place to invest in, because you're going to pay a high premium for anything in the logistics sector at the moment because it is booming. So do your smart investors, your pension fund investors, look at some of those sectors that are struggling, like retail predominantly, and investing in those to make the most of, take advantage of the uptick, which is inevitably going to come with the redevelopment and the regeneration of retail. The government is extremely aware and conscious that the high street is no longer what it used to be like. You and I will remember high streets, bustling corner shops, local retailers. Before the emergence of supermarkets, the high street was a busy place. The supermarkets came along, your Tesco, your Sainsbury's, your Asda's and the like, and that changed the scope of the high street then. It evolved, it recovered, it repurposed itself, and then online came like a big bang, and shortly after, out of town retail. All those things have meant retailers have to be very, very adaptive, very responsive, reinvent itself, which it's done pretty well. I think it isn't just COVID that's caused retail to slide to the position it's in at the moment, with closures of places like Debenhams and the Arcadia Group recently. Those are devastating blows, but that's been on the cards for a lot longer than COVID's been around.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
Arcadia, from what I understand, and I'm not a property expert or a financial analyst of any sort, but Arcadia were sort of accused of not evolving and developing their offer. So it was always, you come into the shop, or if you don't, we really haven't got the same offer. And the likes of the big sort of Boohoo's and Amazons were just keeping up their market share. So it probably was a matter of time, and COVID just tipped them over the edge, haven't they? Which is, like I say, it's devastating to the high street, because these are usually quite big properties as well, aren't they? Which
massive, yeah.
they look terrible when they're empty, and from an aesthetics point of view, but also they're hard to fill because somebody else maybe doesn't want the whole space. So looking at those kind of things, I know you're pretty adept as a business at looking at change of use and flexibility around what could be done. What have you seen, if anything, that's quite impressive? When you see somewhere that looks like it's going to be a bit of an eyesore, it's been empty, it's looking to be desolate and all that, and suddenly it's transformed. What have you seen, John, that you think is, there's a bit of a blueprint or something could happen?
Yeah, no, and it's everywhere, isn't it? It's in the small towns, it's in the suburbs, it's in the larger towns and cities. There's vacant shops, there's vacant retail outlets, and something has to change. You can't expect some of these large department stores to find a new occupier, that they just won't. They're not out there, especially at the moment. So the government initiatives to repurpose the high street, to regenerate the high street is a very welcome one. Just how they're going to do it is very difficult. There's all sorts of thoughts around, do you offer mixed uses? So you try and introduce more restaurants and more leisure, and some more residential. All of those come with challenges. And all of them are going to come with difficulties to actually get the investment to do the redevelopment. But one thing's for certain, we can't leave the high street to be mothballed and disappear, and the tumbleweeds start blowing around on the shopping malls of what we've seen over the last 20, 30 years. It needs to be repositioned very carefully.
There's lots of I've seen bits of legislation where they're making change of use easier, or certainly they're making sort of planning less restrictive. So forgetting the big investors, forgetting the big sort of pension investors, if you are a business owner, maybe a small business owner, are there some opportunities there to, for example, pop-up shops or pop-up restaurants, or, are there some good opportunities out there in a sector that is currently, really struggling? Would you say that's worth them looking at? Yeah,
absolutely. And like I briefly mentioned earlier, those investors that are willing to take a bit of a risk, with risk comes two options, and you either risk and fail massively, or you risk and reward massively. The more risk you take, the more extreme the outcome usually. And I personally think it's still in an early stage as to where the high street is going to end up, how much you can expect to see redevelopment in a it's going to have to be fairly major. You think of some of the sort of out of town, or sort of the suburban town high streets that have had vacant units, charity shops, low attraction type destinations. The high street brands have moved away long ago. But those sorts of places are going to be really tough to visualize coming out of this successfully quickly. It's going to take time, but it's got to happen. So investing in those areas will bring a return. It's probably a more risky and longer term investment.
Okay. I mean, I think in terms of, like you say, something's got to be done, but it's interesting that you don't feel as though we're at the destination of where the high street's going to end up yet. There's more to come before we settle into what going upwards looks like, I guess. Is that your view, that there's still a bit more shaking of the tree to happen then?
I think so, yeah. We, as a business, LSH, are involved in talking to local authorities and those that own the shopping malls in town centres that are 50% vacant. We're talking to those owners, occupiers, landlords and local authorities to help them come up with the ideas and come up with the strategies. That it's not an overnight fix. It's going to take years to redevelop those areas, but there is opportunity definitely in those locations.
I think there's a lot of initiatives that you see online, and I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn and other sort of media. And this buy local, support your local businesses and things. They always seem to me to be very worthy, but they don't seem to have the same traction, because you still see the car park at Tesco and Sainsbury's full to the ginnels when the when they're open. Is that something we should be encouraging more of, do you think, to help that the local shops and buy locally? It just seems to be worthy, but not, it doesn't have a groundswell to me. I don't know what to do about that, really.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. And I think one good thing that's come out of working from home, which I know we're going to cover in a moment or two, is that people have been more loyal to their local independence, because they've been at home, they've gone out for a walk at lunchtime, or they've gone out for a walk in the morning, they've gone to the local coffee shop, and they've used the local facilities. There's been an uptick in the footfall in those local high streets because of it. But I think that's temporary. I think we'll come on to that when we cover the working from home.
I'll tell you what, why
I think
why don't we do the working from home bit now? Because my view on the working from home piece is it's changed the culture of a lot of businesses who I know full well were saying before lockdown that they don't like their staff working from home. They don't think it's productive. You can't be effective. We don't encourage it. You're not doing that. Now, through no choice of their own, they've had to, certainly in the first lockdown, where it was, if you can work from home, you have to. Good or bad thing, do you think, in terms of that flip to, actually, I've enjoyed working from home. I could probably do a hot desk at work if I need to. Maybe I don't need to go in anymore and do virtual meetings. What's your view on the working from home culture, John? Because you do it, obviously, but you also go into the office, don't you?
Yeah, before all of this was even a thing, I would work from home once or twice a month because I'd got a piece of work I needed to do, and I could get my head down and get it done.
Yeah.
But there was always a sense even I would feel a little bit guilty that I was working from home. There was always that stigma.
Hang on, John. Did you get the inverted commas that people used to put up to you when they go, "You're working from home," with the two sort of, as if it was like, "We know you're not." Was that kind of what you experienced then?
Yeah, absolutely. And I judge myself as a fairly honest person, and I would never dream of going and playing golf when I should be working from home, or going shopping or whatever. Even in the early days of lockdown 1, when we were forced to work from home, I think everybody, I certainly was feeling so obliged to put the hours in, to turn the work over, to sort of prove yourself, because everybody's position was, vulnerable. Our colleagues had been furloughed, and there was all sorts of uncertainty going forward. So you felt you've got to put the hours in, but that was almost because you had to. And it led to a sense of feeling drained at the end of a week, because you'd spent 10 hours or more sat in front of the screen all day. And you'd been incredibly productive, and the business was rubbing its hands together because you were getting through more work than you might have done if you were in the office and having a chat about the football, or having a bit of a natter about whatever. But it wasn't sustainable. So I'm now of the opinion that working from home is a viable alternative, that businesses trust and believe that people can credibly work from home and be productive going forward. But the thought of doing that permanently just scares the life out of me. And as time's moved on, people have started to see the negative impact of working from home, which is, it's been well documented, well talked about, and absolutely true, that you can't get the same out of your team when you're talking to them virtually. You can't get the same
and
out of people.
And also, John, your clients as well, you can, if you're going to assess a property, you can't really assess it virtually as well as you can going and, opening doors, looking in places, turning things over, etc. And I think that's why we were productive at the start, because you weren't doing the stuff that you would have normally done. You weren't driving for an hour to go to a meeting, to have a meeting, to drive back. So those 2 hours of driving were replaced by 2 hours of sitting in front of the laptop and banging out work, weren't they? So that's why it was incredibly draining, because it's
completely.
wasn't normal, was it? It wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon the long-term implications are, John, for that? Are we going to see organisations who've got, you know, big office spaces, reducing that and maybe, you know, rotating when staff want to come in, or, you know, what's the impact? Because you see loads and loads of cranes everywhere. You go Manchester, Leeds, you know, major cities. And a lot of that speculative building for office space, is that going to stop for a little while people think, oh, hang on a minute, we might not need all this or not?
Yeah, I think you make a couple of good points there. I think the office space as it stands at the moment, right at the beginning of all this, when everyone was working from home, there were businesses, and we were one of them, we were saying, crikey, we've got this number of offices. Do we need any? Yeah, they were considering options from 0 offices to the whole of the portfolio they've currently got, or somewhere in between. And that was fine, because that's what people were doing. Everyone was at home. But as we've moved through, and like we just said, people's mindsets have changed massively, and the well-being, you know, the interaction, the human factor is impossible. Talking to clients is fine over Zoom, but it's so much better talking to anybody in person. I think, you know, offices are going to be reshaped slightly, but it's nowhere near as drastic as people were thinking back in March and April, when you know, we were considering crazy options like getting rid of all of your offices. I mean, office costs are any business's second highest after their staff, and it's a big lump on the P&L, but it's an essential place to collaborate, to work from, to spar with, you know, and just get a buzz off people. And
well, you
can't do that when you're all sat in your
pajamas and sat on whatever with bad hair days, can you? I mean, you're a gregarious and outgoing sort of person, as indeed I am, and the human contact bit is important. And it's I don't even want to use the mental health card. It's more well-being. It's not necessarily, you know, you're not going to suffer from mental health issues, but you are going to suffer some well-being issues, aren't you, for not being involved in that kind of level of engagement. So the question I've got for you is, how have you managed your team remotely, given that you're head of the Leeds office, and how have they responded to the challenges that they've had this year? You know, have you had to be quite creative about how you communicate?
Yeah, it's been a challenge from all angles, I think, because you never know whether you're overdoing it or whether you're underdoing it. Or I'm talking about virtual gatherings, obviously, on the dreaded Zoom. And I saw your LinkedIn post last week where you've taken copyright to the Zoom arse, and
hashtag Zoom arse, which apparently you can't copyright the hashtag, which is somebody said. But that particular day, John, I had literally done back to back Zooms, meetings, webinars, etc. And I've got a significant amount of padding on my backside. And even then, by the end of the day, I was thinking, wow. And all I did for a bit of fun on a Friday night was posted a picture of a cushion that said "Dad's arse here," and a layout of my day saying I've been back to back. Is there such a thing as a Zoom arse? 3,500 people viewed that post. I had loads of comments, and it's like, but you didn't get Zoom arse when you worked in the office, because you go and have a coffee, or you'd have a meeting with somebody, you walk around, wouldn't you? And it's isn't it?
Totally. And then look at these.
Oh wow! Hang on. Are those glasses, for those who are watching, listening rather than watching? Are your glasses a new phenomenon for Jon Anderson then?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I had a pair, but never wore them before. But sitting in front of the screen for so long, and like you just said, when you're in the office, you get off your backside. When you talk to somebody, you turn and look to them.
Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody on Zoom, you're still staring at the screen. My eyes have got worse in the last 8 months.
That's an age thing.
I wear those bad boys nearly all the time.
That's an age thing, John, isn't it? To be fair,
yeah, I have turned 50 as well. So
it comes to us all. It comes to us all. But you're right, though, because as a different dynamic. So what have your team been up to then, in terms of, have they been trying to do things? Have you been in the office and done social distance?
Yeah.
And things?
Completely, yeah.
What have you done?
Yeah, back in early June, I think it was, when we were coming out of lockdown 1 and things were starting to open up again. We got the office ready, the signs everywhere, one-way systems, more sanitizer, you can squirt whatever at, and everybody was encouraged to come back in, but there was still a massive reluctance then. I think people were still quite enjoying the freedom of working from home. They're enjoying not spending money on commuting, not spending time on commuting, and it was sunny outside, and it was it was quite nice working from home.
Mm.
Some people were enjoying seeing more of the family. Some people were enjoying, just having a bit of flexibility, like you just mentioned. That flexibility of the workspace is here to stay now. We've proved we can do it, and I've always felt and sort of had the mantra of you trust somebody until they give you a reason that you shouldn't trust them.
Mm.
So you should trust your teams to carry on working from home. You should encourage them to come back into the office for all of the good stuff that we just talked about. But you'll soon see if somebody's working from home, in the old adage, and swinging the lead, because they'll just, especially in a business like ours where people are, they generate fees, they generate revenue through the work they do. And if you're not accountable, it's blatantly obvious. So, people know that, and the vast majority will treat it with respect, and they'll come into the office. Because I think we did a little survey back in the first few months around the Leeds office, how many who would think you're going to use the office once a week, once a month, once every other week. And there was only about 20% of people said they'd use it more than once a week. It was crazy. Do that survey now, I think it'd be flipped on its head. People will work from home once or twice a week.
I think it's because it's winter, it's darker, it's less, if you finished at 5 o'clock in June and the sun had been shining all day, you finished at 5 o'clock, you had the whole evening ahead of you. So the working from home bit, the lack of commute was seen as something of that nature. Whereas now it's dark before you finish and you're not going to go out for a walk in the teeming rain and things. So there is a different dynamic at different times of the year, I guess. So on that basis, going back to sort of property and the whole sort of commercial impact of people working from home, etc. There's been a knock on, hasn't there, to the service industries who supply teas and coffees and sandwiches and the things that go with that. Have you seen what the evidence has been in sort of Leeds where you work? I know you work across West Yorkshire. Has there been a lot of closures of the little independents who rely on that office, staff on a run? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and it's not just a little independence. There's a Pret right next to our office, which, because I'm a bit lazy, sometimes I use now and again rather than going for a bit of a leg stretch around Leeds. And I didn't realise just how busy they were, or whether these are good numbers or not. But I was having a chat with the manager one quiet Tuesday when I was in there early in the summer. They just reopened. They were taking 400 quid a day. Previously, they take 4,000 a day.
Yeah, so 10%. But I'm assuming that the rents and the commercial rates haven't gone down by 90%, though, have they?
No. That's just unsustainable. So they kept open for a couple of weeks, and then they said we're going to have to close until things loosen up again. So it has had a far-reaching impact with people not being in the city centres. Those trades, like you said, that thrive on the business population being in there Monday to Friday. And that will come back as people start to come back. It's not going to get back to where it was before, because I don't think everyone's going to be in the office from 9 to 5 days a week.
I think the other side of it is, from an environmental point of view, there's been a really positive impact on carbon emissions and reductions on that basis. So I guess if you talk about smart money being in, well, actually you said the smart money's in the ones that are at the bottom, not the top, aren't you? So you said that probably the smart money's not going into pension funds, going into the big sort of distribution logistics, because they probably missed the boat. Same with, I guess, renewable energies and anything to do with that. That's going to be another opportunity for investment, isn't it, in terms of working with organisations who look after the environment and the environmental aspects of what we do. So have you noticed on the commute in then, the commute doesn't exist when you go in, does it anymore? It's just quite...
No, it's got a bit busier over recent weeks and months. Going into the office in June was just, you were lucky if you saw other vehicles on some days, depending on the time. Whereas you queuing into Leeds pre-COVID, you get it wrong, you can add 40 minutes, 50 minutes onto the journey. But now that's gone. But it'll come back a bit. But I think, like we said a moment ago, people will flex their hours, because they can get up at 7, switch their laptop on, do a couple of hours work, take the kids to school if they need to, whatever it is. They might have an appointment or whatever it is in the morning, then go into the office at 10 o'clock. see a few people, meet a few clients, you know, do a few meetings face to face, and come back at 3.
Maybe catch up on paperwork or Zoom at that stage. That's
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were encouraging that before COVID. In January, in the Leeds office, we trialed a flex in core hours. So people were told, you know, we need to be able to contact you between certain hours, but if you want to start at 10 and finish at 6:30, that's absolutely fine. As long as you're keeping your clients satisfied, you're meeting their requirements, and you're available when we need you.
There is a or has been certainly that 9 to 5 mentality in the UK for years, isn't it? All trips in on the same trains, all trips home on the same trains, all driving at the same time. And I think if anything good's come out of COVID, it has broken the back of that. But let's talk about some of the listeners who might be involved in either the own a building for their for their business, or they're in a lease at the moment. Anything they can do or should be considering to manage the financial impact of that, their assets or their property portfolio. Some people might have 2 or 3 offices, they might have more than that, they might be in a lease that they're tied into. You know, what are the options that people could have to be a bit creative, John, do you reckon?
There's only one option really, that's contact LSH.
Well, that's the shortest answer.
But seriously.
Shortest answer ever. So what if you contact LSH, what would you do for them then?
Yeah, I always like to sit down with someone right at the start and listen to what their issues are. So just listen. Don't say anything. Don't say we've got this, we've got that, you need this, you need this. You don't know what they need until you listen. So you sit down and just be a sponge. Just listen to all of their issues, all their concerns. What options have they got? So then you can start discussing those options with them. But if you go wading in there with here's LSH, this is what we do, we'll fix it for you, you're not building a relationship. You don't understand their requirements.
You don't even know what you're fixing, do you, at that stage?
No.
So that's the issue. What I've always liked about LSH, and obviously I know you on a personal level, I've known you for a long time, is I do like that sort of relaxed professionalism. You know, it's about relationship building. The thing I'm going to miss this year, because I'm assuming you're not having it because I haven't had my invite, is your LSH Christmas party, which I always look forward to. Clearly, we're not having it this year. If you are, and I haven't got my invite, I'm going to cut you off the podcast. But you know, you are a relaxed professional environment where it's about understanding the customer and the client and the building sort of services that they're looking for, or perhaps have got challenges with. Are there some themes though, John? You know, there must be only a certain amount of things that people could consider. You must see,
of course,
a version of something on a regular basis reoccurring, I guess.
Yeah, and I think with anyone who's got a lease and they've been used to paying their rents on a quarterly basis, and they've been under pressure this year to be able to find the funds to pay their rents, a lot of our landlord clients have taken a very flexible approach where they're able to, and say, let's talk about the structure of your rent, whether paying smaller amounts more frequently is easier for you, or whether stretching it over a certain period is you know, there's all sorts of options that you know, honest, good landlords, and most of them will want to discuss with their occupiers, because they'd rather have an occupier paying rent on slightly different terms than no occupier at all.
Yeah, and there's not much they can do. The occupier goes bust and doesn't, you know, they're in the queue with everybody else, I guess, aren't they? So it makes sense for landlords. So do you sit between the two then, John? Do you sit between, so you're the independent arbiter of, you know, landlord, tenant, trying to get them to work something out? Is that where you would add some value as well?
Sometimes, yeah. More often though, we're actually engaged by the landlord or by the tenant. If we manage a property for a landlord, then there's some interaction with tenants, obviously, to make sure that they're paying their rent, but also making sure that they're keeping the property in repair and that they're not neglecting their obligations. But colleagues of mine will analyse leases, and they'll look for opportunities within a lease and go to a landlord on behalf of an occupier and say, look, can we flex it here? Can we talk about this? Can we maybe vary the terms here? You know, what's happened in the last 8 months has been unprecedented. Is there any options, opportunities that we can sort of re-gear the lease, maybe extend it for 5 years to give you some more surety of income, but let's have some slightly more relaxed terms now so that we can make sure we can still be here in 5 years' time. So yeah, landlords will listen.
Well, I mean, they've got vested interest to listen, haven't they? Because the portfolio they've got. A couple of quick final things then. It sounds to me as though certainly pension fund investors will always still, you said at the very start, they'll always love commercial property. So if we have got a pension, we can feel confident that they'll choose the right sectors to invest in and that our money's safe because they've got, actuaries and investment specialists and all that kind of thing. So we're okay with our commercial property as being part of our pension portfolio. Is that what you would say right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's happened in the last 8 months has been catastrophic and all sorts of scales. But like we said earlier on, the opportunity within adversity isn't a new thing. We'll bounce back from this. It's going to take longer than we all thought at the start. But let's be fair, even the Prime Minister didn't know how long this was going to last. Nobody knew how long this was going to last. It's lasted longer than we all thought already, and it's going to carry on. The recent news about vaccines has been brilliant. Let's hope it helps everybody see some light at the end of the tunnel and come out of this with some opportunities in early part of 2021. I can't see that it isn't. I can't see us falling back again. I think it's onwards and upwards from here. Okay. And property will be right back out there, and there'll be different sectors, there'll be different elements of it that are going to prosper than have done in the past. Safe money will go with logistics. Riskier money might go with retail and sort of town centre regeneration, but there'll be all sorts of opportunities in between as well. Excellent.
Okay. Last thing then, 2021, optimistic or more optimistic than you've been, for 2020? I guess it's almost like a closed question, really. More optimistic for 2021, John?
Yeah, absolutely. 2020 started quite well. January and February were brilliant. we got off to a flyer, but the rest of it, that's history now. So I think everybody should be encouraged and energized by what's going on in the medical world at the moment, and the peace people that are scared of taking vaccines that just baffle me. Let's all get on board. Let's get the economy back on track. When it was switched off overnight in March, it was bound to have a massive impact, and there will be casualties, but most of those jobs that have been lost, I hope, are refilled, and we'll just be a slightly longer journey, but we'll get back there and we'll be able to prosper together again.
Well, my view on the vaccine deniers, I'm probably going to lose half our listenership, is that they're probably going to fall off the end of the flat earth whilst looking for UFOs, because they're pretty much probably the same kind of people, I would suspect. So anyway, let's finish on that and alienate lots of people. If there's a vaccine available to end this terrible pandemic, I do not understand why you wouldn't be in the queue to put your arm forward to get it injected in. But hey, that's somebody else's choice. So for those who are regular listeners, you'll know the Impact Sessions is available on all the usual podcast platforms. The videos are hosted on my YouTube channel. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean and Castbox. I've put John's contact details up there, but for those who are listening, John, do you want to just read through how they get in touch with Jon Anderson from Lambert Smith Hampton when they've been inspired to look at their property portfolios in a more positive light?
Yeah, obviously the contact details are there. All the details are also on our website. Have a look, make contact. I'm more than happy to listen, help, and love to hear from anybody that's got any issues that they think we'll be able to help with.
Okay, well, John, that's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being a guest on the Impact Sessions, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers, Nick. Appreciate it. It's been really good.
Thanks.